the line. Trying to go right through, is in. Scores! A brilliant goal! In front, they can score! Huge from Oaks.
Tonight on Nesson, it's the Bruins versus Ottawa in the home season finale. Join Nesson live at 7 o'clock for all the action, including a special tribute to the old Boston Garden.
Went to a garden party, reminisce with my old friends. Chance to share old memories and play the games again. La da da da, la da da.
Cam Neely!
La da da.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Shea, and welcome to a special edition of Bruins Digest. Well, we're into the final seconds of regulation, so to speak, for the grand old building, the Boston Garden. Tonight, the Bruins take on the Ottawa Senators, and we're going to take you inside for a little tour and a walk down memory lane with a couple of the greatest Bruins of them all. But before we do that, let's talk for just a minute about the building itself. Now, there'll be a lot of old-time Bruin fans who will tell you this was the building that Shore helped build. And contemporary fans might say, well, it's a building that Orr helped build, or Bork helped build, and I suppose they're right. But the guy who really helped build it and actually did the building was a guy by the name of Tex Rickard. In the 20s, Tex Rickard was a brash boxing promoter from New York City. Rickard was the man responsible for building New York's Madison Square Garden, and he envisioned a string of these boxing palaces across the country. Boston was his second stop. Uniting with the powerful Boston and Maine Railroad, a site atop North Station was chosen, and construction began. Crews worked around the clock, and amazingly, the garden was completed within 1 year. Hear that, all you people planning the megaplex. On November 17th, 1928, Dorchester's Honey Boy Finnegan upset world featherweight champion Andre Rutis in a non-title bout, the first event ever held at Boston Garden. 3 days later, the Boston Bruins took their first twirl on the garden ice, losing to the hated Montreal Canadiens 1-0. In the early days, boxing was the main event on Causeway Street. Joe Louis defended his heavyweight title at the Garden. Boston's Tony DeMarco won the welterweight belt there. Rocky Marciano, Jake LaMotta, Sugar Ray Robinson, and of course, Marvelous Marvin Hagler all had memorable fights there. Despite Tex Rickard's vision of the Garden as a boxing arena, it was the Boston Bruins who made it their own. They were the first full-time tenants of the building and later part owners. The legendary Eddie Shore was on the 1928 team, and the Bruins took home the Stanley Cup that first season. The next season, the Bees were 23-1 at the Garden. It was quite obvious the two were made for each other.
Now for Oates, now for Wesley, back for Bork, one-timer scores! Raymond Bork with the victory! 20 seconds left, sudden death overtime!
Boston's entry into the NBA didn't debut until 1946, but the Celtics' success needs no description here. Suffice it to say, they've been the single most successful franchise in the history of pro sports. With the proud traditions of the Bruins and Celtics, Boston Garden has become the most famous sports arena in the United States. Right from the beginning, though, the Garden has been included in the local and national political scene. The colorful James Michael Curley, Boston mayor and political legend, held numerous rallies here. In March 1951, one of the towering figures of the 20th century, Winston Churchill, addressed the MIT Mid-Century Convocation. John F. Kennedy held his election eve rally in 1960 at Boston Garden. 20,000 plus jammed every square foot inside, while an estimated 100,000 more packed the streets outside. It remains the largest attendance for any Garden event. Throughout its history, Boston Garden has been the venue for heavyweight entertainment in New England, from jazz to opera to big band to rock and roll. Every superstar act in the world has played the Boston Garden. But the Garden has done more than just host the big-time events. It's a part of our community. In 1930, the Greater Boston Interscholastic League played its first game at Boston Garden. High school hockey players from all over Massachusetts still play their championship game here.
In March 1944, the Massachusetts State High School basketball tournament, better known as the Tech Tourney, began a Garden tradition that continues to this day. Until the 1970s, the Boston Athletic Association and the Knights of Columbus held annual track meets loaded with local talent. And don't forget the Bean Pot, Boston's college hockey crown jewel.
Back the other way, Ash. Ash looking, both teams changing, he scores! Tom Ash! Boston College has upset Harvard and has won the 42nd Bean Pot.
So that's it. 67 years of Garden history. Really, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We could never do this old shrine justice. When we come back, we'll go inside the Garden for a stroll down memory lane with two of the most famous Boston Bruins of them all. So stay with us for this very special Bruins Digest.
Another telltale sign it's game day is the cry of who wants to buy tickets or who's selling tickets. Of course, they're always at a premium because there's always great stars on the inside. Two of them, Milt Schmidt and John Busick, are going to spend some time with us and show you around, so come on. You know, there have been a lot of guys who have really helped out with the history of this building, but there's only one guy who has covered the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s as a player, as a coach, and as a general manager, and that guy is Milt Schmidt. Milt, good to see you again.
David, nice to see you, and I thought you weren't going to finish there. You're going up in those years. I says, my gosh, am I that old? I guess I am.
Well, you're going to keep going, but the Garden is going to go, and I know you are going to miss this building in particular because you've had so many memories as a player in the 30s and 40s and 50s, as a coach, and finishing up as a GM of the Cup winners.
Well, being associated with this building since 1936, a lot of fond and great memories of this building, and it's going to be rather disastrous, you might say, to see it go down. However, the fans deserve a new building. Let's not kid ourselves about that.
Well, some of the greatest fans of hockey will move from this building into the Fleet Center come fall. But of those fans, you might remember the Gallery Gods. Now, you don't have the Gallery Gods seating area now. That's been replaced in the upper balconies by the luxury boxes. But back when the Gallery Gods were in effect, boy, they meant an awful lot to the players, didn't they?
Well, they really did. They took over as far as the cheering section was concerned, both bad and good. If you had a bad night, they'd let you know about it. But on the other hand, if you were playing great, they'd let you know about that as well. And you'd always hear some wise remark from the Gallery Gods. And one in particular, every time Clancy came into town as a referee or as a coach with the Toronto Maple Leafs, why, they'd always be hollering down to him about, hey, Clancy, we've got a town named after you. Of course, it was Marblehead. And he'd stand there and talk to them. You know, he had a great time. And then I always like to remember, as I said before, a lot of wisecracks. And we had a player by the name of Orville Kurtenbach on our team, whom we got from the New York Rangers. And he was having a tough time and just couldn't seem to get going before Christmas. And, of course, it was printed in the papers. And, of course, the Gallery Gods, they got a hold of it. And just the very next game, the first shift that Orville skated out onto the ice, you'd think that they had some kind of a meeting beforehand or something, but immediately they all started out with jingle bells, trying to get them going. But overall, they were great, and they did treat everybody with respect. And as I said before, they let you know when you played well, and they let you know when you weren't playing well. They were part of us.
Has the building pretty much kept its same configuration on the inside when it comes to playing hockey from the days you played on?
Well, outside of the seats in the loge section, yes, and they used to have seats like you have in the stadium today, and the only bad part about that was when the fans got a little upset with certain calls out there, or if we were playing bad or whatever. They'd somehow or another, they would break the back of those wooden chairs out, and all of a sudden you'd see the wood flying out at you occasionally. But actually, the seats and the way they are right now outside of the Gallery Gods, why, they're pretty well the same.
One thing that really hasn't changed is the location of the Bruins bench, a spot that Milt spent a lot of time on or behind through the bulk of his career. What do you say we get down on the bench area and reminisce a little bit?
Would love to. It'll bring back a few memories.
All right, let's go. Well, Milt, this is such an intimate game. It's only appropriate that the Garden was such an intimate building that allowed the fans to get so close to the players and coaches along the bench area. This is still the Bruins bench. Milt would sit on it from time to time when he wasn't skating with his line mates back in the 30s, 40s, and into the middle 50s, and then you pace behind it as a coach. How does it feel to be standing behind here again?
Not bad. The only trouble is that this bench now, I see it's solid down here now. When I was behind there, it was like a picnic bench, you know, and it used to rock back and forth, and many times the players got upset, and you'd find the picnic bench on your feet, which wasn't very nice. Plus the fact also they also had a penalty bench years ago right at the end of the bench, and that's where the visiting team went in there. And I recall coming back from torn ligaments one game against the Montreal Canadiens. Murph Chamberlain was with them. And he gave me a two-hander going into that corner, and ligaments went again, but he went into the penalty box for slashing, and when I went by the penalty box, I was helping myself along the top of the boards. I let one go, and I caught him flush on the chin. And he had a picnic bench, and we had a picnic bench in the penalty box at that time, too, which wasn't fastened down. And all I could see was his feet going backwards. Complete saber. I got some satisfaction out of it, although it wasn't very nice.
The story I like, Bill, is when you were playing the Canadiens in a playoff game. And Bouchard, I guess it was Bouchard, came off. And some female fan had a great way of trying to get under his skin, so to speak.
Well, in those days, we all left the ice and came out on the ice to the same entrance up here to the left where the Zamboni goes off and on the ice. And this one particular game, why this lady had a nice long hat pin. And as Butch went by, she gave him a rap. No, it created quite a scene up there. But those are little things that you remember. And I know the lady, too, whom I won't mention the name, but she's no longer with us. But she's a great hockey fan.
Milt, always a pleasure to talk to you. Going to miss walking around this barn with you, but we'll sit and watch a few games together in the new barn. What do you say?
Well, the new one will be... have a lot of memories eventually, just the same as this one. And I think this is going to be around here for a long time. And so occasionally we can come out and take a look around and say, hey, this happened this year and that happened that year. All memories that will never be forgotten.
And Milt Schmidt, certainly a great part of those memories. When we come back, we're going to take you inside the Bruins dressing room and reminisce a little bit with the chief, John Busick. So stay with us.
Bruins Digest is being brought to you in part by Bud Ice, the official beer sponsor of the NHL.
You know, as Milt Schmidt mentioned, the Bruins have always come on and off the ice here where the Zamboni comes on. They probably do it with a little more panache and flair than I have. But no guy who has ever dressed in a Bruins uniform has done it more times than the chief, John Busick, who played for this club from 55 to 78. John, good to see you. I got to ask you before we talk about anything else, you were always the last guy off the ice, always the last guy on the ice. What was that all about?
Didn't think you'd notice, Dave.
Well, you see that big number 9.
You know, actually, it was a tradition. I'm not superstitious, but I was the last player on the ice and usually the last one off. I used to smoke a cigar when I was getting dressed, believe it or not. And back in the 70s and the 60s, there were quite a few of us that used to smoke. Never inhaled, but we used to smoke.
Where have I heard that before?
Yeah, Johnny McKenzie and I were two bad ones for cigars. We always had one going. And I'll show you inside exactly why I was the last one.
All right, let's go in the room.
All right. All right, Dave, hang on for a minute. See this ashtray here?
Yeah.
This ashtray, I requested that ashtray, as I told you earlier.
That was yours?
That was mine, because I used to smoke a cigar while I'm getting dressed for practices and for games. I'd walk out, it'd be the last one out of the dressing room, put my cigar out, and go on the ice.
Good to the last puff.
I don't know how the players ever believed that, you know, because I kept on smoking, and, you know, it's a terrible smell. But, hey,
leader by example.
I was the captain, so they didn't bother me.
So this is the room. Now, you joined the club in '55. Has this room changed that much since then?
Well, yeah, it's got paint on it, it's got woodwork, it's got nice shelves. In those days, we didn't have that. We had just a pretty well a bench and a place to lay your stuff, and it was different. You have a pole that was in the way, and as we look at this poster, there's a souvenir that I brought back in the early 70s. It's like a mascot, this bear. It's a bear that I brought from Western Canada.
Yeah, I've often wondered about this guy. He's been sitting here for quite a while. Where'd you find him?
Yeah, and Stan Jonathan's mother, I believe, made this beer that we hung around its neck years ago. It's taken a beating. A lot of guys have hit it with hockey sticks and everything else, but as everything else from out west, we're tough.
Another tough Bruin.
Exactly.
Now, where did you sit?
Well, I used to sit around the corner. I used to sit behind this post right here on the very end. A couple reasons for that, you know. When you go back in the 50s, Milt Schmidt was my first coach here, and, you know, we didn't win too many games in the 60s and 70s. It changed, but in the early years, the coach used to stand out in the middle of the room over there and be giving a speech, or else he'd be yelling at us, giving us a little bit of static. Couldn't see me behind the post. I used to kind of hide from him, you know.
Now, I know a lot of the guys on this current edition of the Bruins have had their spots for quite a while. Bork has been right in the middle of the room. Neely has always sat over here next to the shower. And they all, I'm sure, will have stories as their careers go along about guys who sat near them. Who sat near you? Let's talk about the Cup years.
I tell you now, this was funny. This was funny. You got to sit over here with me, Dave. I was sitting right here, and Phil Esposito sat right there. And we always joked with each other. And, you know, and Phil, he would get up, get ready to pull a sweater up. Pretend you're pulling up a sweater. So as he was doing that, I'd reach behind him and undo his suspenders. And he would go out in the ice, and his pants would start falling down. And this went on for games and games and games, and then finally he caught me. He didn't catch me for a long time, but he couldn't understand why his suspenders were coming down and his pants were sliding down. That, to me, was one of the funniest things I've ever done.
Well, the showers are located right over here next to where Neely sits. But back here is the room that everybody, it has such great mystique, the trainer's room. Let's go back and take a look at that. Now, this is a spot that nobody ever gets a chance to go into unless you're part of the hockey club, so this is a treat.
This is off limits for the media. This is where it all happens when you're injured or if you want to get a treatment. And I used to come in here every game, before the game and after the game. You know, it wasn't quite this big, Dave, but the bench, I used to come in and put hot liniment on my legs to keep them going. And of course, I had a lot of back problems, so I used to heat up the back. I used to do that. And then after the games, I used to jump in the whirlpool to cool down. If you get a shot over here, you see, we got two whirlpools. The big one was mine, and the little one was Johnny McKenzie's. No, we didn't have two. We only had one. I'm only kidding.
Need a lifeguard for
I'm
this
only
one.
kidding, right? But we had the whirlpool, and a lot of times after a game or after practice, just to loosen the muscles up a little better, tighten them up, I used to jump in the whirlpool. You notice they even got my picture above the whirlpool.
You must have spent some time here, huh?
We didn't have the ice machine. There are a lot of new items in here. We didn't have the fancy electronics. We just had a deep diathermy and mostly massages, and that was it.
Well, let's take a look at the coach's room. I know you haven't seen that before. Chief spent some time in there, I'm sure, behind closed doors, but we're going to go take a look. All right, Chief, here we are. Brian Sutter, Tom McVie, coach's room. Well, this is a treat because not only do we get to come into the room, we've got one of the coaches, Tom McVie. Tommy, good to see you.
Yeah.
You know this young guy, don't you?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, John Busick is my idol. He's my idol, I'm telling you.
Listen, I think Tommy spent so much time in this room. We never had a coach's room like this when I was playing, but Tommy's trying to make up all the years that I played here, 21 years. He's trying to get it all back in 1 or 2 years. He spent so much time here. Very dedicated man.
Not a real big room, Tommy, but big enough for you and Brian to do what you have to do, huh?
Well, it's good because, you know, we can have penalty killing meetings here, we have power play meetings here, and most of the stuff is taking place out in the big major room, and it's a good working area for Brian and myself. Plus, we've got all the video and we've got everything. It's everything a coach really wants.
Looks like you could start your own TV station over
We
here.
really do. We've got a satellite on top of the building, and we can bring every game in from Los Angeles to Quebec, all over the countries.
Well, Tommy, good to see you. I know you got work to do, and we're going to keep touring the grounds.
Look after my idol for me.
I will, Tommy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Hey, let's get down to where Kenny Flager works on the skates and the equipment. And
Okay.
All right? This will be great, Chief, because this is really like the garden's answer to Santa's workshop.
Well, this is the equipment room now. This is just a tiny room, but this is where Kenny Flager, who happens to be here, known as Doc, he does all the major work. He keeps our skates sharpened. The present players now, he has the spare blades, his rivet machines. Maybe he can explain that to us. But this is the room where the equipment manager does all of the work on all the equipment.
Well, he's got extra sticks around, and Kenny, you've got it all to keep these guys going once they're on the ice.
Yeah, there's not too much they have to ask for. It's right here for them. And like Johnny said, these are the riveters. Use this one for taking off the blades, punching out the rivets. And then I have this one to put the rivets back in the new blades. And we can do it quite fast.
Yeah, I remember the night Donnie Sweeney came off the ice, and if I can, Kenny, this plastic part was smashed. I mean, I've never thought that was possible.
And we, not that blade there, but the tuck blade, which Donnie uses, we can take the steel out of the one he's using and put it in a new plastic. And,
wow.
And you don't have to grind a piece of steel down to match the other one. So it's simplified pretty good now.
Well, they keep you hopping, don't they?
Well, if you love the work, then you don't mind it.
Hey, Kenny, thanks for letting us come in and take a look.
Oh, good to have you, Dave.
Chief, let's head back out into the room.
Okay.
All right, Chief, that just about takes care of the tour of the room. Wait a minute, the stick rack, is there any history?
This stick rack has been here in this area pretty well for 40, 50 years. I don't know that long, but I know it's always been in this area. Each player has his own rack where they put your own sticks, and then some of them stand up here now because, years ago we didn't have that many players. We never used to carry 20 players, so they had to put additional ones here. But this rack pretty well has been here all year.
Where'd you put yours?
I think I was about halfway down, for the simple reason I didn't want to bend down and pick it up.
Always thinking.
Yeah.
Hey, Chief, thanks an awful lot for taking us around the room and
pleasure,
walking down memory lane a little bit.
My pleasure. It's the last time I'll probably be doing this, so I'm glad you invited me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I told Milt we'd sit in the new building and watch a game. You join us, all right?
All right, I'll do that.
All right, we've talked with Milt, we've talked with Chief, we've seen the building, we've seen the room, but there are a lot of other people here at the Garden that help make Bruins hockey and the history made in this Garden, and they're almost as well known as the players, and we're going to take a look at some of them when we come back. The history that the Bruins have made here in the Boston Garden. And sure, you need the players, you need the coaches, the different characters that have helped create that history. But let me tell you something, it takes an awful lot of people to make a building like this go so that the history can take place. Let's meet a few of them right now.
That's like our second home for most of us that work here because we so many hours during the winter. You could put in like 15, 16 hours a day sometimes if they have the two events on a Saturday and a Sunday. Tomorrow we'll be in at 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll clean the ice up, and then we'll edge the corners, then we'll come out and scrape it, and then we'll wet down. Bruins will come out and practice. I love the old barn, just like the closeness of the fans to the ice, the court. It's just, the fans make the whole day. I mean, the players will tell you they go in the corner and they're not hustling. That guy up on the balcony, he's yelling down, and the player can hear him.
Hey, buddy. How are you? How you doing?
They were raving about the Celtics from down at Houston and played in the Astrodome. They had 55,000 people. They must have been watching it with binoculars. Valentine was a part owner. Valentine Ale was a part owner here. That's when we were selling bottles. They used to call it, I probably shouldn't say it on camera, they used to call it Green Death. But that was 55 cents a bottle. It's almost like being at home to me. I've been doing it, coming in so often. And we used to, years ago, we always worked the circuses and the ice shows. I've seen nights when we've run in here 30 nights in a row.
How's that?
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Can I help you? The press room? I've been doing, I think I've been up here about 9. Started downstairs with Blades of Woods. So I've been down there. And I established my own customers. Chicken Parmesan. Chicken Parmesan is a hot item. I have it almost just about every game. Press room people aren't fussy at all. And you said some pasta? The Bruins crowd, no matter whether the Bruins are winning or losing, they're here. No matter what, the writers, the cameramen, everyone. Can I help you? Actually, I like coming here. I enjoy my job. Okay, otherwise I wouldn't have been here this long if I didn't enjoy it.
Well, game time is just ahead, but before we drop the puck, let's leave you with one last intimate look at this grand old building.
It's pandemonium here in the Bruins dressing room. Here's the cup. Beautiful. Let's not drop it. There it is. It's the real thing. That's the Stanley Cup. That's the line. Mackenzie, Stanfield, and Busick. Well, this is the real thing.
Passes to Stanfield. To Mackenzie. Shooting. He scores! John Mackenzie!
He hits Neely. He breaks in. He's wheels for score! Magic turnaround backhand by Neely.
Busick has the Stanley Cup. It's in Boston. And Busick skates around with the cup to the roar of the crowd. Johnny Busick.
Bourque, one-timer scores! Raymond Bourque with the victory. 20 seconds left. Sudden death over. He's in to McNabb. Scores! Peter McNabb from Montgomery. A beautiful termination.
Bill Esposito.
Behind the net to Sanderson. Orr! Scores!